all very intelligent and highly conscious people with big hearts and really wonderful things that you believe in. And sometimes you have to play really dark roles. And there may not even be a transformation in that role. And I've always wondered, like, what is that like? What is it like to step into something that is pretty dark? And, you know, what's the benefit you receive from doing that? And how do you handle it, you know, when you live a very different lifestyle? When you're a minister at a church.
As you're talking, I'm remembering that I did a movie called Fingerprints, where I appeared to be the nice grandmotherly person on the surface, but then as the film goes on, these young girls and boys are being killed off. And it wasn't a bad film. It was a very well-made film by a guy named Harry Basil, who's actually a comedian when he's not being a filmmaker. But I had to sew the lips up of this young girl. Oh God! I had to do all these terrible things. I had a thing over my face, and I dressed like a man, so if you saw me from behind, you would think I was a man. And then at a given moment, I ripped the thing off my face, and you could tell that I was the grandmother. I was all along, I was the grandmother. And I put myself in a space where I literally think I became, for that moment, psychotic. And the way I did that was, I literally, this sounds so crazy, because I know I tell my students, do an as if. You mentioned as if your child, you mentioned it, as if your child was being killed or harmed in some way. And those are all great thoughts, but I get so angry at the industry sometimes. That when I was killing these people, I was killing the boys club, the industry. And
yeah.
That's just the way it is for me. I have a lot of rage at this industry I've been involved with for 50 years now. You know, so that's an honest answer for your question.
I think I could be an actor then too. Just because of that. What else? How, you know, any dark roles? How do you handle it? How do you wash it off? How do you shake it off afterwards? Or how do you even step into that when you live so differently? I don't know, Ronnie, you're a doctor, so I mean, in most roles, right? You're like this.
Yeah, I mean,
so,
I don't play a lot of those, but
right.
I mean, I think if you ask most actors, they love playing. You know, it's like what Kiko said. I mean, they're juicy, and I think part of it is because in day-to-day life, we don't really explore fully those dark aspects of our humanity. You know, who we are, and so I mean, on the TV show Crash, I played a pimp, like a Koreatown of 13-year-old girls, and I mean, for me, I mean, stepping into it was fine because I didn't walk off the set and I wasn't looking for little girls, and I feel like, well, this is a reflection of reality that doesn't really get explored in the media, and I think it's good to shine a spotlight on all of our human condition. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that's what I appreciate about, those dark characters and those dark roles. I think it's really important to show that. Now, if it was a project where, that darkness really wins at the end of the day, I would be reluctant, if not apt to turn it down. And I have turned, things that are misogynistic or, I think, racially offensive, something of that sort. But I mean, usually in stories, there's a point for those dark characters, and I kind of look at it as in that bigger context.
Well, a lot of these characters, when you're playing the notes that they clearly have written within that music of the script, it's a power note, and most of us, if you're an extrovert and you're an actor, I think that comes more naturally. If you're an introvert and you're an actor, then that may be in greater conflict with your own internal source. But one of the things that I think is also really interesting is if you look at somebody like Glenn Close, who you mentioned, she plays that role in Damages so well, and she's an extrovert, and she's a really fun gal. She loves life, she loves people, but she's very clear, she knows what she wants, and that character for her is an easy fit because it is a powerful person and she knows how to play those notes. and has no fear in doing it and isn't worried about whether she is attractive. She's not trying to please people, and that's a real refreshing position for a woman to be in. Risky, because you may turn people off, but she's at the point now where she knows that her skill set is valued in the industry, and it makes sense for her at this place in her life. If you saw Albert Nobbs, the film that she did,
Wonderful.
isn't that an amazing role?
Yeah.
And she plays someone so vulnerable, so fragile, so invisible to herself, that for her was much more of a risk to live in that person. It's a story of a woman who's living as a man in Victorian England. And she did the role on stage first. It took her more than 10 years to bring it to the screen. So it's not always the dark heavies that cost us. Sometimes it's the really fragile people, and it depends on where you start. If you're an introvert or an extrovert, where you're gonna feel that you resonate more strongly, it depends on your own personality. And there are introverts that are actors, you know, not everybody's an extrovert. That's kind of a misunderstood reality, is that when they say,
Actors
wow,
are extroverts.
yeah, gosh, they wouldn't talk to me. Well, a lot of actors are shy.
I was shy growing up, which is why I actually got into acting, to overcome that fear. And no one believes me, like, oh, get out of here. I'm like, no, yeah, I was in that darkness, and I was tired of being, you know, suffocated with my own will. I was like, I'm gonna take the chains off. And I had stage fright when I first got on stage. It was like someone's hands were on my throat, and I could barely get the words were coming out as more airy, like, wild. And then I shook that off, and I was like, okay, this is the direction, I guess, that I'm going. And man, I forgot what I was saying, but yeah, I grew up very shy. That was why I got into acting.
Yeah, I think it's very common. I think you're right on.
A lot of people don't understand it. They say, well, they're nothing like their character. Or I saw them on the street and they wouldn't even look at me, and then they get labeled as a snob or as. And something that a lot of people don't understand is when people are looking at you and you're not in the role or on the stage, it's not an even exchange of energy. It's just not, and that's a tough thing to get used to. And if you're shy, it's really uncomfortable. And people say, well, they knew that this is what they were in for. Why are they doing this? Because they might have a story to tell and they have a calling. But the outside world isn't necessarily what you signed up for. Keep that in mind next time you see somebody who you think is being.
That's really interesting. I never thought about that. It's not an even exchange of energy, because think about how much they're pouring into their roles and they're communicating directly to a camera, and then in person, it's like you're in your own self then, and yeah, that's fascinating. Never thought about it like that. It's really interesting. So there's a thing called the hero's journey. We've all heard about it. I believe Joseph Campbell talks a lot about it, but in many ways, a lot of film and a lot of even TV, if you look at the arc of the seasons together.
One more time.
It's all good. It's all good. There's a transformation that happens. And, I'd love for you to speak to the hero's journey and sort of why do we see a lot of actors, especially often the main character, playing that role of a hero's journey where they are, there really is a transformation.
It's classic storytelling. I mean, from the Greeks.
It
It's
is.
classic storytelling. Yeah.
It is. And it's interesting because, looking at kind of the lens of, I think you had mentioned this before, of it being a mirror, society being a mirror and a reflection. Well, let's go into that a little bit. How do you, a lot of what we're seeing today, right? There is a lot of negative stuff out there.